Alright guys, we've made it into orbit. Once we are comfortable with that, our next step is to head out to the moon and get ourselves into an orbit around there. As a quick note, this video assumes that you've already watched the previous video about how to get into orbit. If you don't know how to do that, go check out the previous tutorial by clicking on the link to the left. Now guys, let's get ready for some hot transmünar injection. First things first, let's head over to orbital view where we can click on the moon and set it as our target. Now we'll be able to see our ascending and descending nodes. If we mouse over these, we'll be able to check our inclination relative to our target. This is where we get to see how well we did getting into orbit. For us here, we're at 0.2 degrees, which isn't perfect, but it's plenty accurate enough to get to the moon. So let's set up our maneuver node for our transmünar injection, which is a fancy way of saying, hey, let's go here. To set this up, I like to double-click on Kerbal to focus on it, which makes it a little easier. Now, we click on the orbital path just on the opposite side of the moon to create our maneuver node. From here, it's best to go to a top-down view of our orbit to get our maneuver's trajectory just past the moon's orbital path. Now, if we click on the middle of the node, we are able to drag it around on our orbital path to start to deduce when it would be best to do our burn. We are trying to get our lunar periapsis at about 50 kilometers, and sometimes this can be tricky. As with many things in Kerbal Space Program, all it requires is a little bit of patience. And this is close enough right here. Once we have that, we're going to time warp to just before T-2 minutes to our maneuver node. From there, we hit F5 for safety. And then we're going to burn exactly at T-2 minutes to figure out how long our burn is going to take us. Since we don't have enough delta V left in our current stage, the estimated burn time isn't going to be accurate no matter what. As we do this test, we have to hit spacebar twice quickly to release our current stage and then start up our next stage. Once this maneuver goes green, we can see that it took us about 53 seconds to burn. Now we're going to press and hold F9 to load our last quick save and perform our burn. Since our burn is going to be 53 seconds long, we're going to start a burn at about T-27 seconds. As we perform this burn, I like to go to orbital view so that we can keep an eye on our orbit as it changes. As we start to get to the end of our burn, typically around 50 meters per second of delta V left, it's good to slow down because we don't want to overshoot it and we can slowly adjust our trajectory to be exactly where we need it. As we are approaching the end of our burn, you'll see that we get an encounter right away, but we want to keep burning until our node is completely done to make sure that we are heading around the moon in a prograde orbit. Once we get very close to the end of the burn, I'll typically just get rid of the node and then burn right on our prograde vector to fine-tune our approach. Right about here is what I want. Now we'll just time warp until we have our moon encounter. You want to be careful not to warp too fast, because you can pretty easily end up with a gravity slingshot, which flies you into deep space. Alright, once we're here, we can double-click on the moon to focus on it, which will make it a little easier to place a maneuver node right on our periapsis. Now we just need to drag out our retrograde vector on our node to circularize our orbit. You want to make sure that your periapsis doesn't get lower than about 7 kilometers, because on the moon there are some pretty big mountains, which you probably want to avoid. By the way, now is the perfect time to F5 for safety once again. Our maneuver is going to be 20 seconds long, so we'll be making this burn at T-10 seconds, so let's warp until just before that time. And now, we just need to perform this burn, and after that is done, we have reached the moon. Now to land on the moon and head back home, but that, my friends, is for the next video. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next tutorial.